Oh man, she did what? Why is the government always lying? That's not your fault. That was your mother's job. I know it sucks. It's hard, but it's fair. If we don't get our heads out of our collective asses, we're gonna be lost in the sauce. You knew he was sorry when you met him at DHS. Come on, baby girl. What's the solution? Look, I know I'm fucked up.
Welcome to the Angry Nerd Podcast. My name is Arshawn Wade, aka the Angry Nerd. Tonight's topic is gonna be pretty much on par with most of my topics. It's gonna be spicy, it's gonna be dicey. You're gonna come, you're gonna have a good time, you're gonna hang out and hear some of the ramblings of the Angry Nerd. This podcast is brought to you by a lifetime of discomfort and morbid twisted views. How about that? But anyways, jumping right into things, this first segment is Hot Topics. There is not a topic hotter right now than Tekashi 6ix9ine. Tekashi 6ix9ine gets out of prison, a reputed snitch, by the way. Not only is he a snitch, but he owns the fact that he's a snitch, and he is parading it around in front of the world. That's what's happening right now. But first and foremost, let me say to all my listeners on Spotify and Podbean, YouTube, if you hear me reference the chat, I'm talking to my people on Facebook because I'm broadcasting live from Facebook Live. And people on Facebook Live, if you guys want to listen to this without looking at my mug, you can follow me on Podbean, YouTube, and Spotify, and you can get the audio itself. All right, back into my hot topic, Tekashi 6ix9ine. Now let me say this first. From the gate, I never thought Tekashi 6ix9ine was a gangster. I never thought he was a Trey 9 Blood or whatever. I never thought he was any of that. Mostly because I've been in the streets myself, and you kind of develop a sixth sense for fraudulent behavior. And I don't think he had any real gangster fooled. I don't think he had any real gangbanger or ex-gangbanger fooled. I don't think any real street people were fooled by this guy and his shenanigans. I think that he's a charismatic young man who is a character. I think he's just that. And he played the character. He played his role very well. And I think a lot like Tupac, when they say Tupac kind of got locked into the role of of Bishop, when he played Bishop and Juice, I think that's kind of what happened to this kid here. He kind of was playing with a thing, and he created this image for himself, and he was running around pretending to be this guy, and he got stuck in the character, and then it got real. Because let me tell you something about running the streets, about living the street life. The streets are real, and the streets will eat you. The streets will eat you. And I think Tekashi 6ix9ine found this out. I think he's playing a very dangerous game. He was playing it at the highest level because we're talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about hits on people, all manner of crazy things. I don't know how much of it was true. Apparently, some of it had to be true because some of his crew got serious time in federal prison based on some of the things that he was involved in or they were involved in as a group. And people are at odds about Tekashi 6ix9ine, his involvement with the Trey 9 Bloods, and his snitching. Now, I have recently gone to war on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram with people who are saying he didn't snitch. Or I don't blame him. I would have done the same thing. And I have to realize that some of the people that listen to me and some of the people that follow me on social media are younger, much younger. Some of these people are in their late teens and early to mid 20s, and their philosophy in life is very different. Where those of my era, we kind of champion ourselves on the struggle. You know, we have endless conversations on how difficult our life was and things like that. And we can talk at length about it. But these younger kids, I would say 25 and under, they don't view it the same way that we did. It's not looked at that way. And I guess because it isn't as real for them as it was for us. And that's not, there's some people who are extreme in their thinking and they'll be like, oh, so they wasn't snitching back then. No one's arguing that. The difference is, once someone snitched back in like the 90s, they were like in the witness protection program and they went to Iowa somewhere and they weren't amongst the wolves again. Because when you live that lifestyle, you are an outlaw. That means you live outside of the law. And to snitch is breaking the rules. It's downright breaking the rules. You are cheating. You're playing the game with loaded dice. It's not okay. It's not fair, because these aren't the rules that we subscribe to as outlaws. And I think that's the biggest problem that most of us who have the old head mindset have with what's going on, is the fact that it's accepted by his peers. You listen to the youngsters, they accept the fact that this young man ratted. And those of my age and older, we don't get down that way. It was almost a nursery rhyme when I was growing up, even as a square, if you want to call me that, in my early years as a square. Snitches get stitches and wind up in ditches. It was like a nursery rhyme. Like, I remember hearing that in like elementary school. And it was just a thing to say. Of course, we were kids. We didn't know any better until someone snitched and found themselves beat up on the blacktop. Then we understood all too well, hey, that snitching stuff ain't all that cool. But times have changed. Times have changed drastically. Because I see that not only do people not have a problem with what Tekashi 6ix9ine did, they are championing him. Like, yeah, man, they was gonna kill him, and they kidnapped him, and they slept with his girl, and all this different kind. They were extorting him, and I'm like, okay, that sounds good. If I was gonna snitch on some guys, and I wanted my fan base to be okay with the fact I snitched on them, I'd probably put narratives like that out there too, because I don't see any evidence to substantiate any of those claims that he was kidnapped, or they were going to kill him and his mom, or that they slept with his, all of that stuff is unfounded. At the end of the day, you don't rat. That's it. Or you do rat, and then you go on and live as a civilian. You don't go out and stand before the masses and say, oh yeah, I ratted, woo, woo, woo. You don't do that. You don't. It's one thing to flout the law, but it's an entirely different thing to flout the streets. You know what I mean? And there are some guys who still hold to the old principles, and I don't think that they're all the way going for that. Now, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on Tekashi 6ix9ine, because the main topic is nobody really wants to be a gangster. And I say that as somebody who's lived in the streets. I say that as somebody who comes from the streets. Nobody really wants to be a gangster. These guys who sit up and talk these stories and tell you about shootouts and all these different things like that and glorify that lifestyle, I call bullcrap on those guys. Because let me tell you, I've been in the trenches. I've been stabbed. I've been shot. I've been everything that's supposed to happen to you in the streets as a gangbanger. I've been that. I've been beat up. I've been jumped. All kinds of stuff, and it's not fun. Although sometimes we'll sit up and reminisce and we'll talk about it. But let me tell you something. Some of the guys who were in the war do the same thing, but they suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome disorder, something like post-traumatic stress disorder. There it is. Boom. So they suffer from that. We don't get diagnoses like that in the hood, though. You know what I mean? No one comes around and they say, oh, Arshawn, you have PTSD here. Here's some Xanax. Here's some classes to go to. Here's some counseling for you and your wife. No, you just kind of live with it. Like the worst situation that happened to me in the streets is I got stabbed 13 times. And both of my lungs were punctured. My right lung collapsed. They had to put a chest tube in me, reinflate my lung. My breathing changed. At one point, I was laying in the hospital and I was watching the news and I saw where I was pronounced dead. And I was like, wow, am I in the afterlife right now? Oh my goodness, is God, am I about to see the white light? Because I'm looking at the news anchor pronounced me dead. So that's not anything to glorify. I don't say that to garner street cred. I say that to tell you I lived a very horrible life and it wasn't good. So when I see people who are in music videos and I see people in these interviews and they act like that lifestyle is great. They act like, oh yeah, this is what, no, hell no. There is no way in the world that you can make me believe that it's fun to be shot at, that it's fun to be jumped, it's fun to be looking over your shoulder all the time. You can't make me believe that it's fun to go to prison, to go to jail, to have court cases. There's nothing fun about that. It's a very depressing lifestyle. It's a very heartbreaking lifestyle. You do nothing but lose. You are 100% the definition of a loser. You lose time with your family. You lose freedom. You lose money. I've lost houses and cars. I've lost all kinds of things. I mean, the epitome of what the word loser means, that's what you are when you live in that lifestyle, because it does nothing but take. It only takes from you. And that's why you see people who get in these situations and they wind up snitching, because they want to be gangster, because it's glorified. It's put in front of you like a gangster is, I mean, he's that dude. You know what I mean? A gangster is that dude. Nobody plays me close. Nobody talks trash to me. I get utmost respect. There is nothing bad that you see that comes with being a gangster when you see it portrayed on television, when you see it portrayed in music. There's nothing bad that comes along with being a gangster. Everything that's gangster is good until you got that orange jumpsuit on, until you're in the jailhouse, until you're in prison, until you're on that level 4 yard. That's when that's when we find out what kind of gangster you are. Once upon a time, I thought I was a gangster because I could walk into class 4 barracks and I was okay. You know, I thought I was gangster because I could go in any neighborhood and I could hold my own. I was okay no matter where I went. A friend of mine used to say his ghetto pass goes barracks to barracks. And I felt like that. I embodied that. I lived through that. I can go anywhere because I'm going to be okay. I can handle myself here. I can handle myself any kind of way. Any situation that's presented to me, I can respond commensurately. And that's the way I felt as a gangster. I've never really used that title to describe myself, but in my up-and-coming book, you guys will see some of the things that I'm talking about. There are some things that I won't own right out because I think that statute of limitations hasn't ran out on it. But I will tell you this, man. It ain't no fun being a gangster. Paul Mooney has a joke. Everybody want to be an N-word, but don't nobody want to be an N-word. And I feel the same way about gangsters. Everybody want to be a gangster, but don't nobody want to be a gangster. You see what I'm saying? Because it's easy to be a gangster when it ain't no fun. But when it's time to stand tall between before that man and those 12 jurors, what kind of gangster are you then? I've seen the biggest and baddest fold up. I've seen the biggest and baddest break down crying. I've seen that. I've witnessed it. And you mean to tell me that that's any quality of life? No, it's not. You go down there on the forum and you're locked up in a cage with these guys, these strangers, these guys with rifles. I mean, it's the worst kind of environment that you could possibly imagine. And the amount of mental wherewithal that you must have in order to maintain your humanity is unreal. Every day, every breath that you take inside that place is a struggle to remain human, to remain somewhat decent, because it's so easy to allow that environment and to allow that energy to take you over. And people may ask me, Arshawn, why are you talking about prison? Why are you talking about jail? Because that's what they don't tell you in the gangster brochure, is that you are going to jail, you are going to prison, you will be forced to fight. You will have someone check you and find out if you can hold your own. The first time you go to the commissary and bring your food back to the barracks, there's somebody going to be waiting on you to find out if you can protect that bag. And if you think I'm joking, keep living like you're living. Go down there on the forum and find out. Because that's what they do not tell you when they're putting you on the set, when they're telling you to go along with them and, hey, we finna put in this work for the hood. We about to do this dirt. Whenever they're telling you all these things, they do not tell you that jail comes with this. They do not tell you that you're going to miss your kid's birthday. They don't tell you that, hey, your mother's going to pass away while you're in there. They don't tell you your little brother's going to get shot while you're in here and there isn't going to be anything that you can do about it. In the gangster brochure, it doesn't tell you anything about that. The gangster brochure doesn't tell you you're probably going to wind up on drugs and you probably won't be able to make it through a single day. After you've done all this crazy stuff, you're probably not going to be able to make it through a single day without some type of substance, whether it be alcohol or some other illicit drug. You may not be able to make it hour to hour without being constantly inebriated. You got to always be under the influence of something because there's always going to be some bad memories coming back on you, gangster. Because that's what comes with the gangster lifestyle. I don't know very many gangsters who weren't also drug addicts. There aren't very many people that I ran the streets with who weren't also addicted to drugs, who weren't also alcoholics, because that's what comes with it. There are so many people who have this Twaja love conception of what it means to be a gangster. And let me tell you what comes along with being a gangster. Drug addiction, jail, ultimately death, court costs and fines and all that other stuff. Those are byproducts of the gangster lifestyle. Why is that, Arshad? Because your entire existence is antisocial, against society. The rules of this society that we live in, I do not 100% subscribe to those rules set down by the Constitution. I'm not saying that, but what I'm talking about is in reality, your existence as a gangster is contrary to the rules of society. Simple and plain. So once you become a gangster, you set yourself against the government. You set yourself against the police department. And if you are choosing to live that lifestyle, you have to know what comes with it. And I think that's why so many people find themselves in situations like the young brother Tekashi 6ix9ine, to where you tell on everybody. And I think it's very savvy marketing on his PR team to flip it and make it fashionable to be a snitch. Now, that's very savvy. That is hellified marketing right there on their behalf. But I think that that's how this young man found himself in this situation, is because he didn't read the fine print when he signed the gangster contract. He didn't realize that, hey man, you can get 25 years for what you're doing out here in these streets. Hey, you could possibly get locked up and the next time you see your daughter, she has kids. They didn't tell him that. They didn't tell him that. They didn't tell me that. And I know too many of my friends who are out there living the gangster lifestyle who didn't know that either. They found out in the courtroom like many of us do. Because on the front end, I'm going to only speak for myself right now, because I wasn't really raised to be in the streets, raised to be a gangster, but I was, as a square, as a nerd, I was fascinated by that lifestyle. So I gravitated toward friends that I saw who lived like that. But I didn't have the same situation as these friends. Some of these friends were very, very poor. And they only lived the way that they lived because of their lack. You understand what I'm saying? They only lived the lifestyle that they were living, selling drugs and doing robberies and things like that, because they had parents who were on drugs, or they didn't have parents at all. They were foster kids and things like that. So the lifestyle that they were living, that I was fascinated by, it wasn't for me, because my situation wasn't the same as their situation. I was just a square from Delaware trying to fit in with some guys that I thought were cool. And a lot like Tupac in the movie Juice, who they say got stuck in the character Bishop, I myself got stuck in that. And you look up and you're like, where did 10 years go? You know, it was like one minute, it's like we're playing cops and robbers and we're having fun and we're hanging out, we're smoking a little weed and we're, getting into an occasional fist fight and everything like that, to we're on a high-speed chase. And we're looking at 25 years. You know what I mean? And it happens relatively fast, because you're not on a schedule or anything. So life's just kind of happening all around you. And then one day you look up and you're standing in front of the judge and he tells you, Arshawn, this charge carries 10 to 40 to life. And next thing you know, your knees buckle under you because you're like, wait, judge, I didn't kill anybody. Why are you saying life? And he says, Mr. Wade, I'm telling you what the possible punishment is based on the severity of this crime. It's 10 to 40 to life. And I said, wait, listen, hear me out, Your Honor. I didn't kill anyone, so life shouldn't be on the table. He said, listen, son, these are possible penalties that can be placed upon you. And I said, well, sir, I don't like the possibility. I don't think life should be on the table because nobody lost their doggone life. He said, son, I'm going to send you back to the jail if you don't sign this paper saying that you understand what I read today. I understand it, Judge. I just don't like it. They didn't tell me about that. They didn't tell me that, Arshawn, you will be in situations where you could possibly get a life sentence without even killing anybody. I didn't know that that came with the gangster lifestyle. I didn't know that that came with it. I thought that I was having fun. I was a rebel with a cause, you know what I mean? I was flouting the law, I was flouting society, and I thought that that was what you were supposed to do. I thought it was okay. I had no idea what the implications of my actions could be. I didn't know what kind of drama could come my way trying to be a gangster. I had no idea. Nobody told me that. And you want to know when I found out? I found out once I already had charges. I found out once I already had the orange jumpsuit on. I found out when I was already down on the form. And you know who told me? Other guys who had already lost. Other guys who had already lost at the game of life in America had to teach me, son, when you get out of here, you can't live like that. And let me tell you something. Putting a foot in somebody's behind in the streets is an acquired taste, but it tastes good, baby. Let me tell you, it is so hard to not lay hands on people in the street. There's always some good guy who needs punching, which anyway was my experience. And I had to learn it is unreal the type of psychological damage that you do to yourself living in the streets. And it's doubly worse for people like me who didn't really have to be that kind of way, who chose that lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why I say it's worse for people like me, because I think Tekashi 6ix9ine is that way. I don't think he had to live that kind of lifestyle. And I think that's terrible. And I say that about myself. Now, mind you, I never snitched on nobody. When they told me 10, I stood tall in front of the judge. And I said, all right. And I went and did what I had to do. And when I brush my teeth every day, I can look at myself in the mirror because I didn't do that. I didn't turn my friends in. I didn't put nobody in. I never spoke on the next man, anything like that. This ain't a clap me on the back moment. I'm just saying, when I was thought I was a gangster and I was living that lifestyle, I played by the rules. This young man, however, I identify with him in this respect, that I wasn't supposed to be out there anyway. So when I was in prison, then I decided, you know what, hey, this ain't cool. I don't want to be in prison no more. I don't want to be around these guys because, I don't really have anything in common with these guys because my upbringing wasn't like theirs. Because, well, I could speak beyond ebonics, so like there just wasn't a whole lot for us to talk about. This wasn't the place for me. And so I started working very hard to get myself out of that situation. I started working as a drug counselor in prison with other inmates. I started watching the free world counselors and seeing how they interact with each other. What do they do when they have a disagreement? Because I know punching people in the face isn't the answer. So, but this is the type of psychological damage that I had done to myself. If you disagree with me, if you hurt my feelings, pretty much all roads into you getting your ass beat. That was pretty much how I dealt with any feeling that I didn't really know how to process. Throw hands, and it's terrible, but that was my That was my drug of choice. Violence was my drug of choice, and I had to unlearn that. And here's where I say that myself, like Mr. Daniel Hernandez, I found out that's what Tekashi 6ix9ine's real name is, Daniel Hernandez. I think me and Daniel are alike in this respect. When I decided to get my life together, I had a reference point because I knew how to live anyway. You know what I'm saying? I knew what I was doing was wrong and it was unbecoming. So I had a place to start. But for the real gangsters and the real thugs, they don't have a reference point because their mom was a drug addict. They didn't have a daddy. They were literally raised by the streets. They literally only did what they thought was best in the moment. They didn't have anybody to tell them any differently. I did. I had someone who, for all my mother's faults and for all her flaws, she had great intentions. She tried to teach me better. She tried to instill values and morals in me. And I had that as a reference point when I decided, okay, I want to get my life together. I don't want to run the streets no more. I don't want to go back to jail. I don't want to be a bum. I don't want to be a dirtbag in society. I want to be a productive member of society. I want to be a father. Hopefully, I could trick some girl into marrying me one day and become a husband. What can I do to do that? So I put myself on the path to doing that in prison. And then after about 2 years, clean and sober, I was still in prison, mind you. I was in prison for 2 years. After being in prison for 2 years, clean and sober, I sit up one day and was like, man, you know what? That is really dirty because I had a place to go back to. I had a place to reference when so many guys don't. There are guys in there who really don't know anything beyond the block. And as sad as it is to say, they will continue to go in and out of prison for the rest of their lives. I have one personal friend of mine who will remain nameless, but he's made like 20 trips to prison. And of course, he's an older guy, but he's been to prison like 20 times. And there are a lot of guys who are on that path. And it's simply because they don't know a better way of living. And this is where I'm going with that. So, like it was wrong for me to be living like that because I knew better. It's doubly wrong for Tekashi 6ix9ine to be living the way he's living and promoting the image that he's promoting because I think this kid knows better, man. You know, it's like, it's not okay. Like what you did. First of all, living that bad life is not okay. Second of all, coming out of that life and betraying the number one tenet in that lifestyle and then acting like that's okay, that is not okay either. That's wrong. And it's really disheartening to see that this is where we are in 2020 to where I hear young people say things like, oh, morality is it's an imaginary concept. We could argue that everything that we indulge in is an imaginary concept. Then it's nothing. We don't have to believe anything. But there are certain rules of nature that we know. We inherently know what's right and what's wrong in most situations. We know that it is wrong to hurt people. We know that it's wrong to take things from people. We inherently know these things. So when I talk about morality and when I talk about, having scruples and things like that, I don't think it's an imaginary concept. What I think that these young kids have just decided, F societal norms, I'm going to live however I want to. I'm going to live like a gangster and I'll snitch on people. There are no rules to life at all. I'll live like a gangster. I'll live like a criminal. I'll snitch. I'll do whatever. And it's very self-destructive because what they're going to find out is that there are some people who are still students of the old school and they are going to find themselves in a very dire situation based on these choices. And I think that they need to know that because I think just like a young Arshawn who had no idea all these bad things came with the gangster lifestyle, I don't think these kids today who are championing Tekashi 6ix9ine for snitching realize that there's a flip side to that coin too. I'm not speaking hurt, harm, or danger onto this young man. I'm not speaking anything negative onto him. All I am saying is that there are consequences for the things that we do in this life. The same way that I found out that there are consequences in the legal world for the way that I was living my life, I believe that this young man is going to find out that there are consequences for breaking the rules in the streets. Personally, I think if he doesn't, that it's like I originally said in a previous video. Tekashi 6ix9ine is not a gangster. He's a cop. Because it's one of two things. Either he's going to get his hat brought to him one of these days, or the young man is an officer of the law and he went undercover and he brought down the entire Trey 9 Blood organization. Because those guys had to have known that this kid was not going to adhere to the same principles that they were going to adhere to as street people, as criminals. I think it would be very foolish to think that this young man would hold true to the same values that we would hold true to in the streets. So, like I said, one of two things. Either he's going to find out what playing that game gets for you, or he wasn't playing the game at all. He was an undercover agent. I don't know. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Once again, for all my listeners on Spotify, YouTube, and Podbean, when you hear me reference the chat, I'm talking to my listeners on Facebook Live because I'm broadcasting from Facebook Live. For my guys over here on Facebook Live, if you want to listen to the show without looking at my beautiful mug, you can follow this podcast on Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. I'm very curious to see what some of the questions are. I'm going to scroll back down and see if there were some questions. And I'll do my very best to answer these questions. She said, say that again. Yeah, they do not tell you that you're going to ruin your life when you decide to become an outlaw. I'll tell you, crime is a rich man's hobby. If you don't have money to fight a case, it's not for you. Get out of the game, get out of the streets. If you are not out here making major moves, listen, it's not for you. Get a job. Go back to school, do something else. Please don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Please don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe when it comes to living this lifestyle out here in the streets, because being successful in the streets, you actually have a better chance of making it to the NBA or the NFL than you do at being a successful drug dealer or robber or a street person, whatever they're doing in the streets these days. It's not really good odds. I'll tell you, the feds, if you make it to the Hall of Fame, the feds have a 98% conviction rate. If you live here in Arkansas, they have a 98% conviction rate. I mean, the law they don't take too many L's, man. You have to understand something. I'll tell you this in closing. The most powerful thing that I did when I was incarcerated was I read my commitment papers. And that's when it all made sense to me. It said the state of Arkansas versus Arshawn Wade. And I had to wrap my head around that, because I said the state of Arkansas, there's about 3 million people in the state of Arkansas. So 3 million against one. I've been in fights where I fought 5 or 6 guys. That's one thing. 3 million people. You know, 1 or 2 people are talking trash on you. Oh man, you're this, you're that. But 3 million people, Arshawn, 3 million people did not get it wrong, buddy. You're doing something that these 3 million people don't agree with, and you got to get in line, man, or else you're going to wind up back in here. And for anybody who is still enchanted with the gangster lifestyle, I leave you with this tidbit. If you do find yourself running afoul of the law, if you catch a state case, if you are an outlaw, your first line of duty is to get out of that state. You're not on the run and you went on the other side of town. You're not on the run. You're on the wait. Another tidbit for any of my would-be gangsters out there. If you decide to be a gangster and you commit a federal crime, that paperwork says the United States of America versus you. So if you commit a federal crime, you leave the country. That's it. They don't tell you that. I had to find that out the hard way in prison. So I just wanted to share that with you. While I have no thoughts, no inkling, no desire whatsoever to commit crimes, to live as a gangster, I do want to leave you with that little bit of information because that's what I found out. I didn't know this prior to going to jail. I had to find all this out reading case laws, trying to beat my little case. There was no way to beat the case. No. They do not tell you this stuff. Everybody wants to be a gangster, but nobody wants to be a gangster. But let me tell you this. If you think you're a gangster because you're running the streets and you're committing crime and you're doing drugs and selling drugs, erroneous. You are wrong. Do you want to know when I became a gangster, a real gangster? When I got out of jail and I got a job making $8 an hour. And I was at the halfway house where I had to pay $750 a month to be there. And I also had to send money to my ex-wife to try and be a father financially because she was 2.5 hours away. I'm sorry, no, she was 4 hours away that time. Yeah, she was 4 hours away at that time. So I had to send money to her. I had to pay my fees there and also support myself, making $8 an hour. And somewhere along the lines, I had to save enough money to buy a car. Oh, well, I'm jumping the gun. I had to save the money to get my driver's license, which was suspended. That comes along with being a gangster too. Suspended driver's license comes along with being a gangster. I had to send money to some little crap splat town in Oklahoma where I got a ticket. And then I had to run the gauntlet and get my driver's license back. And then I could start the long road of saving money to buy a car. And then I got a raise and I got $9 an hour. Woo! That's when I became a gangster. When I decided I am going to do whatever I have to do to stay free and be a father to my kids. That's when I became a gangster. When you pay all your bills and you send your ex-wife money and you have $13 left to make it through the rest of the week, and you can do that without shedding a tear, that's when you become a gangster. And that's when I became a gangster. I started looking around and seeing all these people going back and forth to work. And I seen these people going back and forth conducting business and handling their business. And I said, those are the real gangsters. Because they have found a way in this crooked, morbid, twisted, jacked up, capitalist American society. They have found a way to make it, to survive, without going out there committing crimes, without going out there and hurting people, without going out there and doing drugs. Those are the gangsters. Oh, this next tidbit used to get the gangsters very angry with me when I became a drug counselor in prison. Because a gangster's favorite saying is, I'm going to do whatever it takes for me and mine, you know what I'm saying? Mine's going to eat, you feel me? And I had a little bit of ism by this time. So I said, oh yeah, I feel you. Who feeding them now though? Oh, that's when they get hot. What you mean? You're in here with me. Who's feeding your kid now? The kid that you took the penitentiary chance for to feed. I know that ain't the truth because I ran around with the streetest of the street dudes and there wasn't many of us. Out of 20 street dudes, there might be one who's actually taking care of his kids. There might be one. For the most part, he's out there trying to get rims, CD players, and sound systems and things like that. The average street dude isn't taking care of his kids. So miss me with that, first of all. Second of all, you took a penitentiary chance. Now your kid's out there flapping in the wind. I don't want to tell you how many times I was threatened to be stabbed or threatened to be jumped whenever I went out on the yard to work out because nobody wants to deal with that reality. You bought a lie, gangster. You bought a effing lie. No, there's no happy ending in the life of a gangster. I haven't seen one yet. I mean, everybody from the highest points in the game, Frank Lucas, Nicky Barnes. I mean, the list goes on and on. Freeway Ricky Ross. There's nobody who says, I'd do it all over again. Yeah, I'd go spend 20 years down there on the forum if I could do it all over again. There's nobody who says that because they found out just like we did. It doesn't matter. You're going to jail. You're going to prison. And that's a part of it. Well, to wrap things up, Tekashi 6ix9ine, I wish this kid the best. I hope somebody gets around the kid and they can influence him to use his influence in a proper way. Because right now, he is misappropriating the influence that he has over our kids. And it's not okay. And I think that if he got the right leadership and the right guidance around him, I think that this young man could be a powerful force for young people if he had the right message. Because he's already charismatic and kids like him anyway. So if we could get this young man to get on something positive, I think that we could turn this bad situation all the way around. And that's my hope and my prayer for that kid. Also, anybody who is out there struggling with the gangster lifestyle, find a role model, find a counselor. I'm not a super religious person. Find a pastor, anybody. Just find somebody that, a man that, or excuse me, there's some lady gangsters out there too. Find a man or a woman that you recognize to be a person of morality and that you recognize to be a person of high character. And start hanging around them. Start asking them questions. Start asking how you should be. Start having them give you tips on your conduct. It starts with the desire. And I think most people who find themselves living the gangster lifestyle are constantly looking for a way out. And I'll tell you, this is an option. Find someone who isn't in that lifestyle. Let me tell you something. If you're still running around Ray Ray and Boo Boo in them, you're not going to get any better. You're not going to get out of that lifestyle. The only way that you're going to get out of that lifestyle is to find someone who isn't in that lifestyle and anchor to them. Get help. Go to a church. Like I said, I'm not big on religion, but I think that a lot of religious people are seeking to be better people. And I think that these are good places to start if you're trying to leave the gangster lifestyle. If you are someone who's at the beginning of the gangster lifestyle, here's the jewel for you. You don't have anything invested. You don't have anything invested. You haven't lost anything. You can leave. Just get out of there. Stop hanging around those people. Stop going around those folks. Get all the way away from them. Because let me tell you something. Everybody wants to be a gangster until it gets gangster. My name is Arshawn Wade, a.k.a. The Angry Nerd. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.